I want to hear a horror story. Every industry has these horror shows in the underbelly,
So
but you only really know about them if you're in it.
yeah, I have a fun one actually from last week. So I have a client. They're looking for space in Delaware, and Delaware's a small state, right? So I was able to call every single building I'm aware of in the entire state of Delaware in one afternoon. I had 3 warehouses answer the phone. So think about that. You have a state with about 30 to 40 warehouses, and you have less than a 10% phone answering rate from a warehousing provider, right? And it makes you wonder, like, if the merchants are having this experience when they do it, if I'm having this experience and, I'm somebody doing this at scale.
Mm-hmm.
Are you trying to say that it wasn't Sleepy Joe? It was the entire state?
He might be running a couple of these warehouses, actually.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Liquid Lunch Project. I am Matthew R. Meehan alongside my partner, the professor, Luigi Rosabianca. What's on tap today, Lou?
Matt, I am anticipating a very stimulating conversation for all our e-commerce companies out there. Today on the podcast, live from Philadelphia, we've got Bill Carlin.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Bill started out in the humble valley of Wharton, right? University of Pennsylvania. And then he founded Shipmate Fulfillment, a thriving third-party logistics company, empowering countless entrepreneurs and succeeding in retail. Now, that wasn't enough. He then takes it to the next level and founds Racklify. Now, Racklify is revolutionizing the logistic industry with groundbreaking platform that connects merchants with warehouses and service providers. I think a good place to start is, where did you get the impetus and the energy in focusing all your expertise in the 3PL and e-commerce space?
Yeah, so I started out back in high school actually selling on eBay. So I was like a big eBay guy. I do $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year on eBay out of my bedroom growing up. And it was always like a thing I was fascinated by. And when I went to college, I found out that like the two things I love most are marketing and operations, right? So what ended up happening was very quickly I got funneled into the product area side of things, right? The physical goods, the hardware space. Because I like tangible things. I like things you can touch. I like things you can move, you can see, and you can interact with. And I have a love for marketing, so I like packaging and all those fun things. So it was a natural segue to get into the idea of importing, distribution, wholesale, and then from there, eventually e-commerce.
Okay, but there's something I'm missing. Like, help me bridge. Okay, I'm selling stuff on e-commerce. 2, I'm going to create Shipmate Fulfillment, a third-party 3PL. I mean, how does this, like, where'd that brainchild come from?
Yeah, so obviously when you're selling online and you start to scale, eventually, you can't ship everything yourself. So what happens is you end up relying on services like Amazon FBA. But when you expand to other marketplaces, you can't necessarily use Amazon FBA. So that means that so Amazon FBA doesn't really play nice with a lot of the other platforms and marketplaces. So just recently they started fulfilling Walmart orders, but up until like 6 months ago, that wasn't even possible. So in order to not empower their competitors for the longest time, you couldn't fulfill your eBay orders, you couldn't fulfill your Walmart orders, you couldn't fulfill these other marketplaces that you were selling on, like Wayfair, right? So you'd have to go out and find one of these warehousing companies to handle your goods and ship and fulfill your orders. So one of the things we did is we went out and we started looking at 3PLs and trying them out and things like that. What we found was that we had some issues with transparency, pricing. The sales process was real slick, but it didn't really, work the way they said it was going to work. And we said, you know what? We're going to go out. We're going to start our own fulfillment for our own products. And once we started fulfilling our own stuff, we were like, why don't we just fulfill other people's stuff too, right? And that's kind of what was the impetus for Shipmate Fulfillment. And that's what kind of got us into the world of, 3PL fulfillment logistics.
What year did you launch Shipmate Fulfillment?
I think it was 2017 we launched it.
Okay.
So I was selling on Amazon back in like 2013, 2014. And like I said, we grew that to like almost a $10 million a year business. And after that, when we tried to expand to Walmart, eBay, Wayfair, right, we had some retail stores that we were still doing. We needed the fulfillment arm and decided to build it.
So I got a question for you. So
Yeah.
in 2019, me and a couple people decided we have this great idea. We're going to manufacture a product in China, right? We're going to ship it. We knew nothing about e-com at all, but we're going to ship it from China to the U.S. Prices were great. What wound up happening was it took 8 months to get everything set up. Shipping prices went through the roof. So I have a little bit of experience with this 3PL situation.
That was 30,000 container days.
Yeah. So after I placed the order, let's just say I had to close that business down.
Yeah.
It wasn't worth it. How did you guys handle that struggle when containers were a shit ton of money, right? And, you probably had clients with lowering inventory. That must have been a hard time for you guys during the COVID.
So actually it was the exact opposite.
Really?
So during COVID, there was a massive boom for e-commerce in general.
Mhm.
So you had a lot of people entering the marketplace. I mean, we were at a point where we had a guy selling masks and he was just going through a whole floor, right? We had toilet paper. We had all those things come in and out of the building during that time. And it was all, that was the heyday, right? That was when you had everybody was at home with a bunch of time on their hands and they were like, let's start something. And even though the container prices were high, people were still getting involved. They had lots of money from the PPP loans. They weren't going out to the bar and spending their money. So they were starting businesses, right? A lot of those businesses now have like closed their doors, but during that time, it was really a heyday for 3PL. There was a lot of M&A activity in the space at that time. And you also had a lot of last minute needs because there was such a shortage of containers, of chassis, everything like that. So you had a lot of people that had last minute needs as well.
Wow, that's awesome. So you're running Shipmates, and you decide, all right, let's take this one step further. What made that come about?
Yeah, so it comes from lived experiences, right? So what I've found is for years I've had people come up to me and go, "Hey, you guys do a really good job marketing, right? Marketing's your strong thing. You put out good content, you put out good videos, you do the podcast thing, you do all these things, and you're really good at it." And as I was talking and having these conversations with people and collaborating, it would often come up that they're also dealing with consultants and matchmakers, right, which are people that go to 3PLs and they try to push these deals along from their clients at large fees. Usually it's like $1,000 to talk to somebody, and then they want 5% of your revenue for the next 2 years. And what a lot of e-commerce sellers don't know is that guy that's providing that free service is charging the warehouse, so you're paying for it indirectly, right? So we saw this happening, and other people were coming to us and complaining about it. And we were like, we're going to do something about this because we have tech backgrounds. We know how to build things. We know, we know how to sell things. So let's go and take these skills, repackage them, and spin up a business. So we sat out and we're like, we're going to build a tech solution to this thing that's traditionally been handled by consultants.
Interesting. Now, in these warehouses right now, right, there's a lot of talk of AI. There's a lot of talk of robots. What do you see the future of the 3PL space being?
A lot of consolidation. So right now I see two things, right? You have a lot of big players that are swallowing up smaller players. So one of the things I caution people is if you're going to work with a warehouse, you want to know about their history. You want to know about their financial standing, right? Because a lot of warehouses are not doing as well as they seem, right? Another thing besides just getting rolled up is you see a lot of partnerships going on. So a lot of the big guys, when you go and send your products to one of these VC-backed 3PLs, you're not actually sending your product to them. You're sending your product to a partner facility who is subcontracting that work out from them.
Oh, wow.
Right. Mm-hmm. So you might not even be working with the people you think you're working with. Right. So this is kind of the direction the industry has been going on is people getting bigger and bigger and more complex networks, because in order to compete at this point in time, you need to be multi-facility, you need to have all these things going on, and there's still room for the single facility guy. But that space has been shrinking as more and more VC money has entered the space and there's been more roll-ups.
Bill, if you've got a growing e-commerce company and you're realizing you're developing slowly a national brand and some national recognition, so you've got sales from Washington State to Washington, D.C., and you start adding up several warehouses to meet that demand, do you recommend that e-commerce business owner or manager go out and visit every single warehouse that he adds to his distribution network? Or is there a trust factor within the industry?
Well, let's put it this way. Would you buy a house without seeing it?
No, of
Probably
course
not. There's people out there that do it. I mean, I think they're a little crazy for it, but I would highly recommend, if you're going to spend tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of a year on a relationship with a company, that you at least go meet these people. You shake their hand, you walk around the facility. And one is, obviously, you want to make sure you're sending it somewhere safe and that's clean and that they know what they're doing from an operational standpoint. But the other part of it is you're working with these people. You're going to have a working relationship. Think about this like if you're going out to hire a COO, right? The chief operating officer.
Sure.
These are the people that are doing the day-to-day operations of your business. And you want to make sure that you can communicate with these people, you can work with these people, you understand how their systems of communication work. And the best way to do that, I find, is getting boots on the ground and, having that serious, meeting of the minds and the handshake.
And how does one decide? Like, I'm imagining this is an e-commerce business owner that is learning, right? So rather than learn from their mistakes, let's learn from mistakes of others. How many warehouses is enough? Do they need 5? Do they need 10? Do they need 1?
Yeah, so what it comes down to is really a lot of different factors, right? So you're going to want to look at the size of your product, right? Obviously, if you have couches, it's going to cost you a lot more to ship those over distance than a phone case, right?
Of course.
So you might need more nodes for those bigger items. Another thing you want to look at is volume, right? Do you have the volume to justify all these facilities, right? Because you don't want to be sending 3 packages out of each building. You want to be sending 20, 30, 50, 100, 1,000 packages out of these buildings, right? So you want to look at that throughput. You want to look at the size of the items. And you also want to look at some of that inner transport cost, right? Because there's going to be time lost to manage multiple relationships. There's going to be time lost to manage the shipping of the goods from one location to the other, making sure you have ample stock at both locations, right? So when you're thinking about adding another building, it's important to consider a lot of these things, right? So another thing you want to think about is your average shipping zone and how much that affects the cost. So like I said, with the example of the phone case, it might only cost you 30 cents more to send it from New Jersey to California than New Jersey to New York. But with a couch, it could be hundreds of dollars. So this is an answer you want to answer using math.
Okay.
Do you see a lot of e-commerce brands and a lot of warehouses being set up in the center of the country, so to speak?
So it's interesting. So a lot of the single facility warehouses are closer to the center of the country. And I think that's for a lot of reasons. But if you're going to use one warehouse, unless your customers are concentrated on one coast or the other coast, a lot of times it makes sense to go with a centrally located facility, because this is going to keep most of your packages within the first 3 to 4 zones, right? So you see a lot of single facilities, especially concentrated in the center of the country. Usually when somebody has 2 buildings, they're on both coasts, right? So, and then as you add more buildings, they're all over the place, depending on where their market needs are, where the capacity constraints are, right? Things like that. But as a general rule, a lot of the single facilities are in the center of the country, and a lot of the 2 or 3 facilities usually are on the coasts.
So now my avatar e-commerce business owner is slowly evolving and expanding internationally.
Mm-hmm.
how do you support e-commerce brands if they're now selling in Europe and Asia and Australia?
So currently Racklify is in over 50 countries.
Wow.
So we have warehouses in Malaysia. We got warehouses in Dubai, South Africa, right? Sweden, name it, right? We got it. And what it really comes down to is understanding a lot of the laws and the taxes in the areas, right? So a lot of these countries have different types of taxes. Like if you're talking about Europe, you got the value added tax, right? You got these different rules and regulations you need to be aware
I've heard
of.
about those things. Are those called tariffs?
No, it's a little different than a tariff, but tariffs can also come into play too, because if you're importing, but like I said, the biggest thing is being aware of like the laws and your tax obligations, right? When you enter these markets, because it's pretty easy to find a warehouse in these places if you know where to look, right? And it's the same process as anywhere else, right? Understanding the cost, understanding how things work, right? And hopefully having a working relationship with these people, whether you visit them, whether you do a Zoom walkthrough, and spinning that up, because as an e-commerce seller, there's two ways I like to grow, right? The first is through what I call kitting and bundling, which is taking the things you have, creating as many variations, as many listings as you can out of it. And the other is through international expansion, right? So if you can create more listings out of the items you already have, you can sell on more marketplaces, and you can sell in more markets, you're going to be very successful as an e-commerce seller.
Can you share with us a success story of any case study that you could come up with about an e-commerce brand pre-using Racklify and post-using Racklify, and what using your platform can do to a smaller company?
Yeah, so think about smaller companies. So in terms of smaller companies, we've had a couple reach out that we've been able to connect with various providers across the country. One of the key things about Racklify is we're not a consultant, so we don't actually follow them throughout the process. We do a handoff, and then the warehouse kind of takes it from there.
Great.
So what I can say is that we get a lot of smaller inquiries, and we also get a lot of like large specialized inquiries. And because of the vastness of our network, we're usually able to connect them with 3 or 4 options, and the warehouse takes the communications from there. One of the great things about Racklify and how it functions is that it is an open marketplace, meaning we don't gate the information for any of the providers. So if you don't like the people we suggest, you're more than welcome to just find somebody on the platform, call them, email them. Like I said, we're not taking a commission for making any introductions. So we like the whole self-service model.
Love the business model.
So tell me he wanted a good case study. I'm more of the type of guy, I want to hear a horror story. Every industry has horror shows in the underbelly, but you only really know about them if you're in it. I'm sure there's got to be many in your space.
I have a fun one actually from last week. So I have a client, I'm not going to say who, but they're looking for space in Delaware. And, Delaware's a small state, right? So I was able to call every single building I'm aware of in the entire state of Delaware in one afternoon. I had 3 warehouses answer the phone. So think about that. You have a state with about 30 to 40 warehouses that I'm aware of, right? There's probably more, but 30, 40 warehouses. And these are people that want business, that are actively seeking leads, that are sitting there going, why ain't I growing? And you have less than a 10% phone answering rate from a warehousing provider, right? And it makes you wonder, like, if the merchants are having this experience when they do it, if I'm having this experience and, I'm somebody doing this at scale.
Mm-hmm. Are you trying to say that it wasn't Sleepy Joe, it was the entire state?
He might be running a couple of these warehouses, actually, but no, like I said, I called like 30, 40 warehouses, and I got, responses from about 5. And, it was kind of disheartening because, like, usually when I get an inquiry, I have an idea of like a couple people I can maybe send it to. Mm-hmm. But this was like a geographic specific need because of an installation project. And nobody in that geographic area would answer the phone.
Now,
is
that an industry problem, or is it just the state of Delaware?
I think it's an industry problem, right? So the 3PL
are they
industry,
automating like customer relations just like every other industry? Have they become like Chase Bank where you can't get a human on the phone?
So they're like Chase Bank, but imagine much, much smaller, right? So some people automate it, some people use call centers, some people don't even answer the phone, it just goes to voicemail. And you got to remember, a lot of this industry is mom and pop. It's been around since the 80s, right? Like even if you have 6 buildings, those 6 buildings, were bought in 1985 and ran by your grandkids for the last, 5, 6, 7 years. So what ends up happening is the 3PL industry gets a bad rap for customer service. And what ends up happening is because there's a limited amount of resources, a lot of operators put that into actually operating, which means that they lack on the customer service or sales front.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's like, you ever see those like graphs about like college, you can have a lot of fun, you can get good grades, right? Or you can get a lot of sleep, right? And you can only have 2 of the 3, right? It's the same thing in 3PL, right? You can have a good sales process, you can have a good operation, but then maybe your customer service and support lacks, right? Or you can have good customer service and support and a great operation, but do you have a sales team, right? Especially in these smaller buildings. So a lot of times 3PL gets a bad rap for bad customer service. And it has to do with you're in an industry that's kind of thankless, right? Because
Bill, hold on a second. I think we're onto something. Okay.
Yeah.
You had a bad-ish experience with Amazon, and that evolved into Shipmate fulfillment.
Right.
That then evolved to Racklify.
Right.
Now you're realizing that your industry is fractured and can use some improvement. What's the next generation of the Bill evolution?
Well, more Racklify tools, right? So that's the beauty of a software company, right? And this is why this, I think, is the next logical step in everything I'm doing, is we can solve the question of how do you get business, and then we can solve the question of how do you interact with that business, and then we can solve the question of, how do you get your transportation? How do you do all these other different things? And these are all things you can tackle through one software company, right? Because it can do all these different things at scale. Now, obviously, Racklify is starting with the warehousing, right? And helping connect people with warehouses because that's our core value proposition, and that's the problem we set out to solve.
Matt, he's selling picks and shovels to the miners.
Love it.
Yes.
I love it. This is great.
So you said you're really big you really love marketing and you love the operational side of the business. Okay.
Yes.
I'm more of the marketing guy. Luigi's more of the operational guy. Right. So when you first started Racklify, what are some things that you started? Because you had to go out to the warehouses and you had to go after the e-commerce brands as well. Right.
Yeah.
So how did you do that?
So the first thing we did was actually start Racklify News before we ever started Racklify.
Okay.
Right. So what we did is we started an industry publication, writing stories about people in the industry, companies that are doing big things, and just free publicity, pumping people up, making them feel good, right? And getting some eyes on their business, right? Something that we can do that we're good at that doesn't take us a lot of effort, but somebody gets real value out of it. It's really tangible. And then from there, we were able to launch Racklify. We already had some of these, relationships, one from the 3PL business, but 2 from this new Racklify News thing we've been doing. And we were able to kind of, build a base from that, right?
What do you find more challenging, finding more warehouses or finding more e-commerce brands to use Racklify?
Yeah. So this is the current problem we're trying to solve. So the adoption rate on the warehouse side has just been insane. Right, like it's exceeded every expectation. Like I said, we're 6 months into a public launch. We've got 9,000 warehouses on board, and of those 9,000 warehouses, about 600 of them are active users. Right, so it's a lot of mouths to feed, so to say. Right, And in the same breath, we're getting a few dozen inquiries every month, but divide 600 by a few dozen, and you see really quickly how this goes, right?
Yeah.
So the thing is, we're fielding a great number of, merchant leads, but it's not anywhere near the demand we have from warehouses. So one of our big things is we're really investing in our next development cycle in the merchant, right? Giving them tools, giving them things that can bring them value to bring them to the site so we can hopefully deliver better in that category as well.
Yeah, I love that. Now, because you did, for the 3PL space, you ran the news organization where you gave everybody interviews. Now it's say, hey, what can I do on the merchant side to help them
Right.
get their business either in order or actually, up and running? Really?
Yeah, and it's one of those things where unfortunately, you can't tackle both problems at once. But now that we have the shelves pretty well stocked, now's the time to go out and really ring that bell and bring feet in the door. So that's kind of our next big thing here in the next 3 to 6 months is taking that traffic and shooting it through the roof, because we already have strong traffic. But if we're going to be the biggest and we're going to be the best, we're going to take that up at least another degree or two.
I mean, it seems commonsensical, because if I'm an e-commerce business owner, I would have to just spend hours, if not days, researching different warehouses or just having everything consolidated neatly and tidy on one platform. I mean, your website is very well organized. It's very user-friendly. It's intuitive. It's a wonderful experience. It's probably just a matter of educating the consumer.
It's brand awareness is really what it is. Like I said, we've been publicly launched for 6 months and 12 days now, and it's a matter of getting the word out there and doing what we can to become a household name. Like I said, we're growing.
On that note, where do these e-commerce companies find you and find
Racklify? So like I said, the biggest thing we're doing right now is content, right? So the good news is our traffic's all organic. We haven't really gotten into running ads and things yet because we are a self-funded startup, right? We don't have any investors. We don't have any backers, right? It's us. So from Racklify News, from YouTube, from all these different things, we've been getting very, very strong traffic numbers. Now, in the next 2 weeks, we're going to be launching our ad engine. And once we have our ad engine launched, we're actually going to be able to monetize the site, right? Because right now we're just giving everything away for free, right? We're a big hug, everybody's friend, everything's free. But we're going to be able to sell those ad placements to companies that want more visibility, that want to come up first or second in search, right? And really elevate that experience further on the 3PL side. And that's going to give us more revenue to go out there, buy ads, and deliver on those media buys.
So is the ad placement going to be on the website, or is it going to be in Racklify News as well?
So we're doing both, right? So we're doing sponsored articles, we're doing homepage placement. But the one thing that I'm really excited about is, our whole site's like integrated with AI and everything like that. So what we've actually been able to do is basically build a keyword generator, right? Where you'll be able to say, hey, I want to be the number one warehouse for cold storage in Alabama, right? And you'll be able to get to come up at the top of the search results for cold storage in Alabama. So what we did is we made it that you can, do a global campaign where you show up for everything that's relevant to you, or you can do these targeted campaigns where you're going to go after a niche that you really excel at or a type of business that you really enjoy winning, right? Because everybody has an ideal client profile, and we want to help them target that ideal client.
Matt, I'm throwing this out there, but you heard it here first. In 10 years, the Philadelphia Eagles are going to be playing their home games at Racklify Stadium.
At Racklify Stadium.
Hey, Bill, thank you so much for being here. We want to be respectful of your time. We want everybody to go check out Racklify News. Before I let you run, I got one question for you, right?
Yeah.
You were always an entrepreneur at heart, but you wound up going to business school. Probably, arguably, probably one of the best business schools, right? What's one thing that business school did not prepare you for during this journey?
Sales.
Okay.
Business schools do not teach sales. There is not a class called Sales Number 101, right? So if you're going to learn to sell, that's a skill you have to develop yourself. And nobody's yet been able to point to me to a business school that teaches you how to sell, how to raise money, right? How to do these persuasive actions, right? The closest you're going to get is maybe a negotiations course, maybe some sort of contract law course, but there's nobody out there that teaches you how to sell.
I love it. I love it. They definitely need to add a sales course in that.
Yeah, add some sales, add a little bit about taxes, you know.
The
stuff we actually use, you know.
Call it the Glengarry 101.
Yeah.
Bill, thank you so much. Everybody, that's a wrap. The Liquid Lunch Project. We'll catch you on the next episode.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Let's go!